And there is a notebook flying around, so I did request people to put your name, email address, and things. So please, if anyone haven't signed up, please raise your hand and we will pass it. All right. I'm not very good in tech. I'm good in what I do, so I try not to get into things which I don't know. So my first and last attempt to get into tech is this thing. So that's about it. All right. So now getting in here. So I am coming from Perth. I lived in Perth for 16 years, which I'll talk about. And the business name is Enrich, which is what it's all about. So you have to enrich your investments. So again, there's a lot of talking about Perth in general. People are like, okay, why do we want to buy in Perth? What's it? And things like that. So I'm trying to cover it in a very general sense as an investor, what you should probably be looking into. Some of that you might already know. You might have already been investing in different locations and stuff. But as it goes along, it gets more and more into the details of it. And please feel free to ask me any questions if you have. And I'll try to leave like good 10 minutes for discussions after this thing. And then I'll be there at booth number 4 if you want to talk about it. I'll be more than happy to talk. And there is a notebook flying around, so I did request people to put your name, email address, and things. So please, if anyone haven't signed up, please raise your hand and we will pass it through. All right. I'm not very good in tech. I'm good in what I do, so I try not to get into things which I don't know. So my first and last attempt to get into tech is this thing. So that's about it. All right. So now getting in here. So I am coming from Perth. I lived in Perth for 16 years, which I'll talk about. And the business name is Enrich, which is what it's all about. So you have to enrich your investments. How do you get there? What do you do? And step by step is what I will be able to help you out with. So before I start this, I want to proudly acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, which is Jurak, Aborigine communities and their rich culture. And I want to give my respects to them, the first Australia's first people, and the traditional owners of this land where we work and live on. Right. So the key takeaways for here today is I'll be talking about what you potentially want to know about. Every one of us out here is financial freedom. I was just talking to someone else, so how I decided to move away from what I was doing before to what I want to do now, and how I got there. And investment, and the new term now is rent investing. It's not that people haven't done this in the past. Many people have rented and they still continue to invest. But now it's the new term, which is rent investing, which we'll talk about it as well. And mainly people from Sydney tend to do this a lot. And then the demographics of Perth, some stats about it, and what Perth means to Australia. Why now it's like, okay, Perth does a lot of these things, but what it actually means to Australia is what I'll be talking about. And the investors' eagle eye, so like eagles, they see even an ant moving on the ground while they're in the sky, right? So that's what the investors are. Many savvy investors are very picky why they want to do this, and I'll be talking about that. And why buy now? Why not before? Why not maybe 10 years from now or whatever it is? So the ground reality and some of the in general, things which are happening, when people try to buy by themselves or they don't know the market and they try to do things, what mistakes can happen. I'll just talk about a few examples. And finally, it's about, I as a local BA, what I can provide, which, you might want to know more about it. So a bit about me, same as any one of you. I'm a son, a husband, a dad, brother, investor, property mentor. So I've been mentoring few different people for over a period of years. So whatever I've done to my extent. When I get into it, I get into it full. So I've done my bachelor's, I got 2 masters, and then I got all the degrees what you can talk about. I'm an asset manager in engineering, and I got a real estate license certificate to do this. But then I decided, no, I want to expand my knowledge, so I did my diploma in property as well. Related about property, a lot of people are like, that's not what we are here for. I've presented many in engineering and engineers Australia sessions and stuff. That's not what we are there for. We are there for property. So as a property related thing, so I've been in investment and I've done developments for my own self as well for over a decade now, and I built my own portfolio. And living in Perth for 16 years or so, so I've got a very good network of professionals. I know people anything about property, like my friends or my clients, whoever are there in Perth, they usually, sorry, can you hear me now? So they are their first point of contact. And so I've done about 24 deals in the last few months since I started this. One thing I want to make sure is whatever I'm talking about here is very general advice. I don't know your personal situations. If you want me to talk about it, I'll be more than happy to talk, and we can discuss on this much further. So I'll run through this slide about the financial freedom and stuff. There are a lot of people who ask me, and I actually had someone I was having individual one-on-one things in the last couple of days since I came to Sydney. Someone was saying me, oh look, shares give me this thing, so why should I invest in property and things like that. So the whole idea is, building the equity and generating the passive income. And also property has a thing where, you can leverage on banks' money. Banks give you the money, so there's Dheeraj here was sitting somewhere here. He's there, so he's from BOQ, so he can help you out and he can explain you more about how you can leverage and how BOQ can give you more money or any other lenders for that matter, right? And as any investment, when you do this, you have to understand your individual circumstances. Is this something what fits into my requirement? And so even in properties as well, there are multiple types of properties. What property gives you the best is what you have to understand. And that's what we work with. We try to do and explain people about, okay, look, these are the risks you are signing into. Do you really want to do this or not? So whatever you do, make sure you do your research and understand the risks, what you're getting into. So based on your family situations, you have to know what your risks are and you have to make a call based on that. And it's not like, it's not all rosy. Sometimes, people have made bad decisions and, you have to be very, very clear about what you're getting into it. So renting, there's quite a few myths, right? There are a lot of people who say that, okay, so only if you're wealthy, you can do investing in there. It's not true. There is a lot of different things which come into the picture. I know someone who is very, very rich. He makes about 450,000 a year. He still can't buy an investment property because of the mistakes what he has done. So it's important to know what it is and what you should be doing and things like that. And always invest in the city you live. That's what people say. Oh, buy in here. I know this area well. Why do you want to go buy somewhere else where you don't know? But you have to understand that you have to go where you are in there. I'm really glad this room has got some really good people who has got experience. Some of my colleagues in this room as well. So it'll be good. I'm excited about the topics which we can discuss much further. And there are people who say cash flow is the king. That's it. Don't worry about anything else. Buy in a town where no one wants to own. It gives you $1,000 a week and go buy that property. But then you have to understand what your risks are. I've known someone who burned their hands doing that. So I don't want people to be doing it without knowing what you're getting into. A couple of chairs here if you want to sit down. There's one here and one over there. And how many times have we heard this? Sydney is the king. There is nothing else. So yes, if you have $5 million budgets, try to do, there is some real good investments you can do in Sydney. But it all depends on your situation, how much you can spend and what you can do with that money. And a lot of people say debt is bad. So my wife is a medical doctor, and a lot of her colleagues are like, they've earned a lot of money, but then they're like, man, I don't want debt. Right? It's different. So the way we are brought up when we're growing up is all about you study, you work all your life, you have one house, and that's about it. No, that's not what the thing is. Things have changed now. We got to we got to move on from where we are, and that's the whole idea. And property always raises in value. It's not true. Some of the properties don't rise in value for a while, and sometimes there's a good reason why they don't do it. And you might still want to hold a property for that because it might fit into your requirement, right? So you have to understand what it is. Rent investing this is where a lot of people in Sydney are doing it. Is you continue to rent where you are, you continue to rent to your office, close to your office or your apartments or whatever it is, wherever you want. So you don't change your lifestyle, and buy in properties where they grow in value, they provide you cash flow, which is the most important thing. And the biggest thing is build a sizable portfolio. Again, when you're buying a property, one property doesn't do much for you. You have to consider what your portfolio want to be. And that's typically what I do. It's like I don't talk about a property, I talk about a portfolio. If you ever speak to me even before I started the business, whatever, that's what I do. I spoke to some of my other people, who wanted to talk to me and stuff. I always talk about it. Factors to consider. Again, some of us are very, very open and talk about it. We put on our social media pages, and there are some people who say, no, it's a secret, no one knows about it, it's a secret recipe and stuff. But you know what? By end of it, this is all it is, right? So you got to understand the location where you're putting. And the biggest driver is the demand. How much is demand in there and what's the supply coming through. And what's the rental demand? Rental demand is important as well because from bank's point of view, you want to see how much money is coming in. If the money is not coming in, it's a business, right? You like it or not, it's a business what you're running. What you're investing versus what you're getting short term and long term, that's what the banks see. And any supporting factors like, what's the location like? Are there any good schools? Is the train stations nearby? What's the crime rates? And a lot of other things which come into it. So we look into all these different things when we do it. And I say this all the time. People are like, oh, why am I paying so much? What am I doing out of this? Price is what you pay. You can pay whatever you want. But if there is value to that, we will pay for it. If there's no value, we won't pay for it. It might be only like $20, for example. If I don't see a value, I won't do that. If it's $100 and if I see there is value, I'll definitely do it. And the most important thing is you have to find the balance. It's not about either one extreme, either cash flow or this or something. So again, it's very general in nature, right? So you have to understand the balance, what you want to get into. So Perth, at a glance, it's a booming city. I don't know how many of you have traveled to Perth, but many people who come to Perth on a holiday, they really like the city because it's all new. It's all like, you don't have extremely old buildings and things like that. And it's the fourth largest city in Australia with a population of over 2 million. And it's the fastest growing city in Australia. You know, there are many people, especially from Europe and things like that, they want to go to Perth because of the weather and things like that. And the average age is only 36 years. So international students are growing really high. I don't know how many people have been following that, and I'm pretty sure there are not many international students among us, I believe. So I was also part of quite a few other networks. So I was talking to a migration agent who is probably one of the biggest migration agent last month, and he was saying they're expecting 12,000 students to come in the next semester. So where are these people going to live in? 12,000 people in Perth alone. So they need houses, right? They need to rent somewhere. So where are they coming? So the rental demand as it is very high. When people talk about it's good now, what happens in 2 months' time? I'll tell you 2 months' time it's going to be even worse. So you know, one of my properties which I'm renting at 620, and the tenant have been there for 4 years now. So I didn't increase much rent because they're very good. They look after the property. Now they, even before the tenancy is over, they want to increase the rent. So making sure they want to have the property. They're like, oh, do you want to increase the rent a bit? I'm like, no, I'll wait for the term because I know it's going to go even more. That's how it is at the moment. And diversifying economy, there is, unlike the traditional industries of mining and all these things, there is a lot of healthcare coming up, education is growing up, and there is a lot of tourism happening in there as well. And you know, also there is the living standard of living is way high than some of the other cities what we see in Australia. So I was in Melbourne in March. There is a couple, really good couple. They've been living in Australia for 28 years in Melbourne. Both work in IT. When they saw my banner, they're like, Perth, where is it? You know, so I was like, okay, I should probably put a map of that. You know, so what you're seeing here, this side of it, Western Australia, Perth is capital of that. That's about 1/3 of Australia, if not more. And in Perth, sorry, in WA, so this is where Perth is, and these are all the remote towns. What it is. I had someone who from Sydney. He bought a property in Broome, which is here. He said, I bought it for 600,000. I'm renting it at $1,800 per week. You know, can you beat that for me? Then I'll buy from you. I said, no, I don't want to beat it. You know, so what you're doing is really good, but do you understand? It probably only gets occupied 3 months a year. Imagine 9 months you don't find tenants in there. And when you want to sell the house, I've seen people doing that. You probably won't even find a buyer for 200,000. If it's the right time, and if you have someone similar to you who's thinking, I'm going to make this forever, he's probably going to buy, and you know, it's only a matter of time before that guy realizes what it is. So if you think that that's what Perth is going to give you, $1,600, $1,800 per week on a 600,000 house, don't even get here. That's not what we do. So you got to understand that is what you're talking about. If you had 10 properties, 12 properties which are all growing in value, yes, you know, you can do it. That 3 months could probably pay for the whole year by itself. But you know, you can't. It doesn't fit into everyone's criteria. You got to understand what you do. Same with some of these mining towns as well, the Port Headlands, Karatas and stuff like that. They're very good rental returns. But over a period of time, if it doesn't do well, the mine stops for whatever reason it is. Some operation stops and they're not allowed to do anymore. Your property is worth zero. Like you might pay only 400,000, but imagine in 1 year's time it becomes zero. You know, you don't have much to do on that. Yeah, I'll leave it there. And this is a very high-level Perth map. You know, it's in terms of, you know, there's all these councils, you know, council breakdown. There's a lot of activity happening. A lot of people have asked me already about this since morning. It's only been half an hour. There are many people buying in this area. Am I not buying in there? Am I buying in there? Yes, of course. I'll buy in any area as long as the numbers work for me. Right? So, as an investor, if I am buying in any part of Australia, if it fits me, why wouldn't I buy in any part of Perth as long as I understand the risks? That's pretty much what we do, right? So now getting into stats. So at a high level, there are about 71% of family households, and you know, there's single people about 25%, and the group households of 3%. People roughly about 30% I believe now is they own it outright, 40% on mortgage, and 27% are renting. And this rental numbers are going to increase even higher. So this is interesting. So if you look into all the states, right? So other than Queensland, WA is the second highest in terms of population growth. Queensland, you got a lot of big remote towns as well, and Perth doesn't have a lot of remote towns. WA doesn't have a lot of remote towns. So where are all these people coming? They're all coming to Perth Metro. Unlike in Queensland, you have towns where you got Cairns and all these different areas, and you know, we don't have that, and still it's not much of a difference, right? And you talk about Sydney, it's 0.7, it's way down. Right? And now if you're talking about Perth in general, so you know, if that's again, you know, if you take Brisbane out, we are the second largest in terms of population growth. Now here, internal migration versus external migration. It's actually funny that internal migration, other than, you know,
again, take the Brisbane thing out, but every other city is negative. So, Perth is the one where people are moving in. I actually have clients who signed up with me. They moved from Sydney because they couldn't afford a house. They're like, we are sick of it. We worked enough in Sydney and we still can't find a house. So we want a life, so we're moving here and we want you to find a house. So they want me to find a house which is the prime pleasure unnecessarily, which I don't like. We want to buy a good house, right? We don't have to just buy because we have to buy something this weekend. That's not what we want to do. But that's what they are planning to do. So I'm still working on it. So now, while I'm here, I'm still working on it. So I'll probably secure the deal tomorrow. So that's the population growth. Then comes the median weekly earnings. WA has got the highest after Northern Territory and Australian Canberra, obviously. But they are different markets. We are not talking about decent markets. But if you look at the states, WA has the highest earnings. And in terms of the mean dwelling price, how much it costs for the house, like how much I earn versus how much it costs for my house, WA is the lowest across the thing. So that's a good indication of what you say. People used to say you spend about 25 to 30% on your house. Everything else has to be with your expenses and living and stuff. But in Sydney and stuff, you probably pay 50 or even more. Perth is still around that 30%. There are not many places around Australia, capital cities I'm talking about, which is as good as that. And this is a representation again where we are in WA. So that's typically what people have been earning, right? And I know some of the people might be thinking, oh, that's all mining and stuff like that. I have some more slides for you later. I'll show you. All right, now heading into this, what Perth means to Australia, right? It's a very, very strong economy. It's the India's capital city, as I said, and major contributors to future developments as well. So we have given about $6 billion of surplus budget to the government, and we export about $223 billion in 2021. Accounting for more than half of the national exports, that's across the country. And WA's domestic economy has grown up by 5.7 since the pandemic. The pandemic has changed a lot for WA. People haven't been looking into it, and now they see a lot of value. In the last 3 years, Perth has grown a lot, and there's no stopping on it. And the state government has been spending 41.2 million just to support the international education. So that's where the international students are coming through. They're being attracted to Perth a lot. And this is interesting. What they say is if WA was a separate country, it would have been the richest OECD country. So what OECD country means, I have to look it up in Google myself. So it's about the 37 democracies which are in there, and that's across the world. So they pick up the countries in there. WA was a different country by itself, it would have been the richest country in the world. So talking about diversification, let me just run through what are in there. So obviously the mining and resources are there. All the companies you're talking about, the PHPs and the Rio Tintos, FMGs and stuff, they are 30%. And a lot of people over here think that this is all mining, right? How many of us work in IT or HR or something placed in Sydney? So you're typically working for a WA company. So I have one of the gentlemen raising the hand. I know someone who is in here, he's doing the same thing as well. And agriculture is a very, very big factor as well. There is a lot of fertile land in Perth. It's about 9 hours drive from Perth, you can see that. So that's there. And technology is growing up. How many people are using Canva here? Right? And the girl who started Canva, she is my colleague's daughter. So I met her when she was in school. And obviously none of us knew what Canva would be at that time. She had ideas of what she could do, and her dad is like, oh look, no one would buy this, and now we are talking about probably $1 billion company, So there's a lot of these companies, tech companies coming in there, and I'll talk about that as well. And healthcare has improved, education has improved, and there's a lot of construction happening. Tourism has picked up a lot, and transport and logistics and retail and manufacturing as well. This, my friends, when people say mining is the biggest thing in WA, there's nothing in there. This chart is for the whole of Australia, and you see mining is just not WA, it's for the whole country. It's if mining stops, what people say, if mining stops, you don't have anything in Perth. If mining stops, whole of Australia is going to stop. It's not just WA. So when you think that it's risky to buy in WA because it's only mining related, the whole of Australia is risky then, right? So I don't want to go into these individual details, but at a very high Google search, this is what you could get. These are all the projects which are happening now, and some of them are towards the close of the thing. So, for example, Metrolink and all these different projects is actually going to improve your, the connectivity to the city and things like that. So that will get better as well. And there's many new schools coming there, about like roughly 600 million being spent on this. All right, talking about the investors' view. Again, what does investors want? They want population growth and strong economy to keep the growth going, and that's what Perth can offer. And you want to have diversified, the job industries and stuff like that, which is in there. The rental yields are probably the best. You can't get any other capital city which can give what Perth can offer at the moment. Yes, there are remote towns which can offer, but if you get a better or even the same sort of rental returns in a capital city, why would you want to go into a remote town? When things slow down, the towns will go on. And access to the international market. This is interesting, right? I was talking to someone. So this guy has set up an IT company in Perth. I was talking to him usually it's in Sydney, so why is it that you picked Perth? He said, all the investors, every tech company, the investors are in Asian market. They're coming from China, India, and these people. And in the past, they wanted one of their head offices in an Australian capital city, so they're coming to Sydney or maybe Melbourne, right? But the thing is, by the time they wake up, half their day is gone. And if they want to talk to them on the weekend, they don't work. So they were like, okay, why should I have something in Sydney or anywhere else? So instead, now they can actually have an office in Perth, which is a capital city in Australia, and it's less than half the price to own the offices, to rent them and things like that. And every 6 months, either the investors travel over there because it's easy to travel, or these guys go back in there. So the time zones, which are almost the same, like Singapore and us are in the same time zone, for example, that makes a big difference, right? People have more accessibility, which means they invest more in there. The more people coming in and things like that. So tech has been picking up a lot in that sense. And the quality of life, again, I was talking to someone this morning downstairs, and he said he was in there, and finally he could talk about all those areas where people have been buying, because I think he went there to see those properties and stuff. So he was saying it's so nice, and it's a lot different. You should actually see the quality of life. It's a lot better. I can tell you that. The traffic. That for me. That's the reason why I used to live in Melbourne, and I moved to Perth 16 years ago and never looked back, because I wanted to spend more time with the family rather than being on the road. Right. So why buying now is obviously there is a lot of growing demand, and rental vacancies are 40 years low. It's on an average. This was about 0.4 now. And the state has been investing a lot in education and international students and stuff, and there's huge demand for it. Most of my properties which I bought, they're all rented even before the first home open. People are putting multiple applications as soon as we advertise, even without even opening the property. And it's very, very affordable. We saw that, and the strong economy which we saw there as well. There's multiple projects which are there. Whatever I've shown, there is more than that in there as well. And a lot of people have been buying home and land packages from here, which I don't recommend at the moment. I know the construction industry has been struggling in Perth, so you don't want to do that. And it's classed as a regional city, so it's actually, if international people are coming in, it's classed as a regional city. So there is more interest from the international markets as well to come in and live in there and stay in Perth. So they need houses as well, so who's going to pay for them, if you don't have investment houses. And strong population and opportunity to take advantage of the full future growth which we are seeing now. Why is Perth safe as compared to 2011? We all know what happened in 2011. I don't know how many people bought properties, but they all went down in 2011. And that's because of the fake demand, which is coming from eastern states buyers. At that time, what it is mining was doing really, really well. People, on an average, the people are running about 65,000 in Sydney, and people in W are running about 150,000 at that time. So everyone thought that's how it's going to be. So a property which is worth 300,000, people are buying at 500,000 because they saw it as very low risk because our income is way too high. But how long did it sustain? Within a year or two, it all dropped down. So properties which are like one of my properties, the previous owner bought it at 495. I bought it from him at 326. So it took a while, right? It took a big hit, and that's the reason why they saw the drop. And then everyone forgot about that completely. And it took more than 10 years for us to see that growth. It's very, very organic. It went through really, really risky times and stuff. And now it's at a stage where it can't go back. So the market has gone, the government has done enough to make sure there are more people coming in and staying in Perth and things like that as well. It's much safer than it has ever been. So if people are thinking that, okay, in 2005 I saw this and it hasn't grown much, yes, that's the reason why you should invest now. Because it hasn't seen this growth. Every property industry across every single city goes through a property cycle. Unfortunately for the Perth, with the huge growth which we had at that time, it had to go through that huge low. So we are not there anymore. At that time when it was high, the properties in Perth were actually much more expensive than the properties in Sydney. And who would have thought, if it would have continued, then it would have been even higher. But we knew that that's not going to happen. So it has changed a lot, and there's a lot of people who want to get in. The state government, as I said, have been taking a lot of initiatives as well, and there is heaps and heaps of infrastructure projects which have already come through, and there are more coming through. And now, yes, there are many people who are buying through this and stuff like that. So you see the difference, who actually can help you out, and what you should be doing to see the difference. So spot the difference and understand what you're getting into. So talking about the property market, right, how we are different from someone else maybe is, everyone talks about data, this absolutely, data is really good. It tells you where you are, what it is, and you can, it's, the past history is not an indication of the future, and whatever is currently doesn't mean that it's going to happen in the future, but we try to make the best decisions possible. So, but when you see the data is about 1 to 3 months old. Like, how many people have been going through core logic? It's about a month old. Or some of the other data which people are showing now is what I've seen on the ground in January, February. When I told people that, look, this is what's going to happen, someone said, oh, at Perth, you never get there. You won't get more than 10 people looking at a house. And you see the market now, even before it's advertised, they already have offers on the properties, right? So some of the properties, there are 40, 50, 60 people waiting to get into, to just get a view of the property. And connections are really important. Yes, many people have connections here. For example, you talk to an agent on a phone, but knowing them on a phone versus knowing them personally is different. Like, no one would lie to me because I know that it's going to impact their business in the future. Neither me, none of my clients will buy from them anymore, for example. So we work in a very, very different sort of environment. So, but again, we don't spend less time on all these different things. So we do spend a lot of time with people. So we have the real network and real connections. And you have to understand the WA rules. How many people have signed up thinking that, okay, I'll get out of the contract if I don't like the property, the building, and best you can't do that with Perth. You have to understand really what you're getting into, and you need to do that. So with me, for example, you don't get that comforting lies. I would rather say it upfront, saying that, look, this is what it is. So I want you to understand what you're getting into, rather than just signing your thing. And so real network with real people. That's what we do. I just want to give you a few examples now. So this is a property which I saw for a client. This was in January, February. So I said, look, it's probably worth 375, this property, right? So this guy is like, oh no, I looked at the data. The data in that area is only showing early 300, so I don't want to invest on this property. So once we got this property, it was meant to be open only for 20 minutes, but they actually opened it for 1.5 hours, and they got 6 offers right there when they were there. So he just didn't believe me, and then when it was sold, that's when we saw. This particular property could have been subdivided into 6 properties. So you can leave the property in the front and you can still make 4. This is another property, just to indicate that how the real people works. So I saw this property before it was advertised. We made the offer on the property, we done the deal on the property. And then it was advertised in the market just because the selling agent wanted to show that, oh look, I have a property and things like that. So there is a property right next door, that property, which was sold a day after this property came in the market, and that was sold 35,000 more than what we paid for this property. And this is actually a bigger one as well. This is another property we bought off market, completely off market. No one knew that this property existed. So we bought the property, the deal was done for a Melbourne investor. And so they advertise it now, as we speak. If anyone are still following on real estate and stuff, you might see this, unless they've taken it down. This is another property, again, talking about it. So as a buyer's agent, right, if someone buys the property, that's when I make money, right? So I could easily go and say, oh, go buy this property. But then I went there, I saw the property, it's brilliant property, but they're asking about 40,000 more than what I thought it's worth. So I told them, don't buy the property, it's not worth it. So my buyers are like, okay, we'll stick to you, and we don't buy that. So instead, I'm still waiting for them to find a property. Rather, I don't want to buy this. I want them to buy it at a good price. I didn't see the value. So now talking about the mistakes, right? These are some of the good buys for some people, but for me, it's mistake. So this is a newish property in a location which I don't really regard really high, and someone paid 670,000 for this property. And then it's like, when they asked me, I wouldn't pay 500 for this property. Yes, it's a new property, but I'm not going in that location at that price, so I don't want to be doing that. This property, they renovated the property before they put it in the market. It's a typical 4-bed, 2-bath house, but what they've done is they got multiple living areas. So they put these temporary walls in there and put a door and made it into another bedroom. So it turned into a 7-bedroom house. So I saw the property and I said, okay, 510 is what I want to buy for my client on this. But someone paid 530 on it because the rentals are higher. But I know that the work what they did was very, very cheap as well. Things are going to fall down on it. They just did it to sell the house. We don't want to be buying a property like that. This is another property. It ticked all the boxes, everything. The selling agent wasn't telling us everything, so I did a lot more research. What I identified was the next door house is actually a social housing. So you don't want to be buying next door social housing. So I said, no, we are pulling out of this. They had 12 offers on the property. So I still pulled out and I was like, okay, we are not going to buy this property. And this one, it's an old house, I renovated it. It's a big land, you can see it's beautiful. The house is really good, right? So for a Sydney investor. So this investor has got 12 properties. This is the 13th, which we wanted to buy. I looked at it and I said, okay, we are negotiating. We went up till 5:30, and then they said, okay, what if, do you want to increase it anymore? And these guys said 5:40. I said, no, 5:30 itself is a bit too high for this. Let's stop over here. So we stopped. We didn't go any further. But if you look into it now, it went high sixes. I don't even know who paid for it. So in my view, they paid about 140,000 more than what it's worth. So when are they getting to get the money? You don't want to be making these mistakes just because one, you have the money, or you're worried about losing. There's a lot of people who are worried about losing the property, so you don't want to be doing that. And as we said, the city is the king and all these things, they're different. It's nothing but you, it's like you are the king, you have to know what you're doing. If you do the right decisions, you are the people who stand out as kings. So understand what you're getting in, what you do. So a bit about ourselves, what we do. So we have a detailed 7-step board. Again, it's like, it's a typical biasing thing. People say we have 15 steps, 8 steps, 20 steps. End of it, everyone does the same thing, right? So I try to keep things simple. So it's like, so we understand what the situation is, so and then we sort of strategize. Perth offers something where, for the same budget you can buy multiple types of properties, so if you want to do a developmental property, you can do that. If you want something buy and hold, you can do that. There's multiple options within Perth, right? So once you do that, we go select the areas, and then we do a thorough due diligence, and we'll do the negotiation for you, and then we'll close the deal. And beyond this, right, so that's where probably I'm a bit different to some of the other people, is I have people on the ground whom I've been using them for my own portfolio. I've worked with them for a number of years. Like my property managers who are managing my properties, they manage my own as well as my clients. They offer special prices as well as they offer special services as well. And I know these people for more than 6 years, for example. So I know how they operate, and they know how I operate. So that's how I operate. And same with the building and pest inspector as well. What we do, the conveyances, every one of these guys. My conveyances, they take my call at 10 o'clock in the night on a Sunday night as well if I have to talk something. When there is a deal to be done, we straight away make the deal. We can't wait for next day or the day after to, we miss the deal, so we don't want to be missing out any good deals which are coming through. So the ongoing support is something which we really take pride on, and that's the reason why, we have many people who are coming back for their multiple properties. So the biggest thing what I say is, if I'm in your stage, if I wouldn't buy it for myself, I wouldn't buy it for you. So I would rather wait for the property, it might take a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is, but I wouldn't want to put something where I wouldn't buy it for myself. So that's how personalized I offer my services. So some of these properties I can run through with them individually if you want, which we have purchased for multiple clients. This is a one-off deal. I've seen many buyers agents or a lot of people saying that we bought 100,000 under the market value, 300,000 under the market value, every single property. It doesn't happen. It does happen in some cases, but it's very rare. This is one property which I would think that we achieved an exceptional deal. That's because when we got in, we didn't know that we were going to get this deal. It's only when we got in is when we identified there is an option, and that's what we did. The bank has valued this property at 1.56 in October. I bought this property in February. It got settled in April. No, not April, May actually. It got settled in May. So we bought the property for 1.1 million. So whoever the buyer is, it's under, from bank valuation, it's under 450,000 under the market value. Why did the sellers accept this thing? Is like, they have a cutoff. If they can't sell it on the day, they're going to lose everything. What the bank said is, we'll give you a date until a certain day. If you sell it at that time, you get 50% of your property because they're going through bankruptcy. So they said, we'll give you 50%. If you miss the date, you won't get anything. So you might as well do something. So they were so thankful. They were thanking me more than the buyers for buying the property. So it all depends, right? If we know that there is a deal to be done, I'll definitely do the deal. I'll get into it. So I actually had buyers agents from Sydney calling me, asking me, can you buy me a property like this? I said, if I know that this was like that, I would have bought it for myself. We didn't know about it. We got into it for a buyer. So from an ethical point of view, it has to go to the buyer. That's what we have done. So then again, multiple projects we have done, and this, for example, I could probably talk about this roughly, is for a first-time investor. He doesn't want any risk in the property, right? So we bought a property for 522,000, and that was before any buyer's agent have even looked into that suburb. So none of the data was stacking in there, but now the data stacks up. But we bought the property in January. So it's like, so you're talking about 4 or 5 months away, the data was not even stacking at the time. So we bought it for 522,000, and it was rented even before the home open at $650 per week. And now the properties around that street are selling at high fives. And again, I'm telling you that, I can't get you this exact deal for everyone. It all depends on what it is, over a period of time is what we can do. There is a property which I bought for someone here, in this property which you're talking about, the one on the corner. So I bought it for an owner occupier with a very limited budget, under 270,000. So we bought it for 269,500. We had someone knocking on the door asking, do you want to sell the house? We'll buy it for 370. They were so excited, they called me saying that, oh look, we'll sell it for 370, now we'll go and buy something else at 269 again. I said, I can't get anything for 370 even, don't even do that. So that property has a lot more value. If you go and hold it, you can get a lot more out of it. So the market has changed a lot, and there are still areas which are still good, so if you are in the market, we can do a lot more with that. So and these are some of the other properties which bought. This is an interesting one. So I bought it for one of the Sydney investors. So it was rented way more than what we thought. It's actually one of the Sydney people moving to Perth, and they're going to rent this property, and we're talking about 460 on it now. So when they rent it, we're waiting for the settlement, and then it will be rented. So these are all the properties which were done, and this is the last which were done last week for an owner occupier. So yeah, it's literally like the second house from the street. So it's about like I put it as 15 seconds because they have a 3-year-old son. It probably it's probably 5-second walk to the room. So yeah, it's I've been doing from the low end to the highest end. So depends where your budget is, what you want. We can definitely do that. I just want to place a small video about one of my clients' feedback which I got last week.
Would we recommend enriched property investors and buyers agents to family and friends?
Yes, Raj comes highly recommended from us, particularly if you're interstate or new to the portfolio market. Is really enthusiastic and just wants to help you develop and build your portfolio.
It takes all the stress away from anything to do with purchasing property, and he is such a high level of service.
And in essence, all we had to do was come up with the money, and Raj did everything else. And we're happy with it.
Yeah.
I like that smile by the end of it. So these are a couple who are in their high 50s. They both fly and fly out. They live in Perth, but they do fly and fly out, and they're hardly home. And whenever they're away from work, they'll be traveling. So they're literally not there anymore. So they don't know what building a portfolio means. Then they're like, look, we are 58 now. We might want to retire at 63. We have 5 years. So what can we do? Can you please help us out? That's when I said, look, one property doesn't do anything for you. You have to look at something which is long term. They wanted to buy in the same suburb where they live, and they want to rent it to their daughter for whatever money she gives them. I was like, no, that's not how we do it. Building the portfolio. So we bought a property for them at 500,000 exact. It's rented at 600, I believe, from day one. And they help the daughter get a rental property. The daughter is only 21 now, and I'm working with her so she can plan herself for a purchase next year. So she is doing some part-time jobs and stuff. So she needs to have some money and things. So I'm actually mentoring her and getting into that space. So and yeah, you can go into my testimonials and stuff. There's quite a few other things coming through. And I don't spend a lot of my time and effort on marketing, unfortunately, because I still do the engineering job and I still do this as well. So which means that I put all my time onto my clients. Rather than understand their needs and work with them, rather than trying to promote myself. Most of my clients are all referrals because of the clients whom I work with, and they refer their friends or they come back to the second property and stuff. So there's a client whom I bought 2 properties in 12 days, and they've been waiting for 8 years to buy a property. They just didn't know whom to trust. They didn't know what to buy. They all the sales talk when they see a property. And now they're working on their 3rd, and they're wanting to buy one on their super as well, so it will be their 4th. So last year they had only 1 property, and this year they'll be having 5. So that's how they've been going through. And so I'm a big supporter of being very open and honest and share as much knowledge as I can. So if they like it, they definitely come back. So I don't hold back any information, and that's what I'll be doing forever. And again, I'll be on booth number 4. So please do drop by and scan the thing, and please put your information in, so I'll get some details from you and we can talk more. So we still have time. So if you guys don't have any questions, we have about 15-20 minutes now. So I'll be more than happy to take some questions. Yes, please. Yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah. So I've been for myself as well. So I do know some builders and stuff. If you need that, I can help you out with those things. And depending on the budgets and locations and stuff, I can tell you which area might be good and which areas might not be good. I can help you with that definitely. Yeah. So I'll put you through to that. Yes, of course. Yes, yes. Yeah. And then build a house. Yeah. Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Yeah. So I'm doing that now. I've done it for a couple of people already in the very premium suburbs. The suburbs we're talking about is like it's already $2 million in there. So So they want to build a house for themselves. So we secured lands in that area. It's again the same thing. Some of them come with an old house, so you just buy it and you later plan for demolishing and building the properties and stuff. So I'll help with that as well. Yeah. So we still do all the due diligence. And I also recommend them to buy the house, so at least until when your plans are ready, you can continue to rent and you can do the appreciations and stuff. So I will work with that. Yes.
Thank you for your time. My question is about capital growth. So,
Yeah.
how is Perth tracking with capital growth?
It's going pretty well, just because of the fact that it's still under the market value, a lot of the properties, and as I said, there's no capital city which is in the same price point as Perth. Yes, you might still be able to find something in Adelaide, but they're known to be very, very rough areas. And even those areas have grown up a lot already. So, when you're getting in there, you're paying higher dollar, or here you can still buy something which is still lots of place to grow. So I've been talking to a lot of locals as well, because it's good for us, our properties are growing up pretty well, right? So I've been talking to them and saying that, look, I think at least 12 to 18 months is what Perth has got to get some good growth. And then it's always like a cycle, right? So everyone comes in here, everything grows up, and then they're like, oh, it has gone up now, so I have to go find something else, and you go something else. And one thing I wanted to make sure, so like I don't know if it's really good, but I want to make a bold statement and say that, how many times we have seen people saying, oh, someone I know bought a property 10 years ago and it has gone like 5 times, 10 times, and all these things. And I can tell you now, I don't think we will see any more after Perth. Perth is the last capital city across Australia where in our lifetime we'll see something like that. No other capacity is going to give that much growth as much as what Perth can give. And Perth is your last chance to be able to get that kind of growth I'm talking about. Yes, everything goes by 2%, 3% and all those things, but yeah, not to that extent, that great extent. Yes, please.
So I keep hearing this, people are buying 3 properties, 4 properties in a year or something. You just gave an example.
Yeah.
They had 1 property, this is the 4, right?
Yeah.
But I do know that you need 20%.
Yeah.
How do people achieve it? Or is it something that you can strategize? How do people get that deposit money for 3, 4 properties?
So yes, from our side, we plan in a way that it can work. So from the bank's point of view, it's like a business, right? So what's the business and how much do you do and things. So this particular client who I spoke about, where we bought 2 properties in 12 days, so they haven't spent the money for years. So they've been only paying up their owner of their home. As I said, they've been waiting for years to buy a property. So they have enough cash in there. So the 2 properties, they didn't pay a single penny. Including my fees, everything came from their equity. So they didn't have to do anything. So they still have a lot of savings left, and that's what they're doing. And they still have a lot in super as well. So they're very, very well placed for that. But then there are some people who might not be in that situation, right? So you might not have $800,000 or $1 million in your bank account. So you might have for 1 property. So what we do is we try to buy in the area until that area grows up and things like that. And as soon as we see some equity, we take that equity out and we move on and get the next property. Sometimes where it can help is, sorry, I'll just come back to you in a second. Where it can help is someone wanted to buy a property, the property which I shown, which you bought for 522. So these guys wanted to buy an owner-occupied home at $1 million. So if we would have bought that, for me as a buyer saying I make more money from that, right? But I told them, no, look, you have to buy this first, because if you buy that house, you won't be able to buy this anymore. So now that they got this and they're so good on the cash flow, now they're actually getting into the second property now. Sorry.
What if the serviceability is impacted? For example, person has the salary of 100K, he has already bought 800K worth of property,
Yeah.
and he cannot buy more because the bank won't lend him more.
Yeah.
In that case, do you recommend he should be going to second-tier lender or someone?
Absolutely. I would do it for myself as well, because by the end of it, the property what you're buying is not for just today, it's a long-term growth, right? You're talking about 20, 25, 30 years. So whatever the lender it is, I would do that for myself personally. I'll just go grab a property, wait for it for 6 months, the rental pays for itself, and when the equity grows and things like that, the moment any bigger bank want to take my business, I'll switch to a bigger bank. And then I'll jump onto it again. So it's like, so
Doesn't matter, right?
someone who's giving me the money, it's his risk, not mine, so I'll take it.
Instead of that, for example, if the person doesn't want to fit the serviceability criteria, then can they make use of some structure like trust, company, etc.?
Yes, there are different mortgage agents who can work with that. So again, it's like, I'm not a finance related guy, I shouldn't be giving you the advice, because I have to understand where my boundaries are. As a real estate agent, I'll be able to help you what's good for you, but your accountant is the best person to tell you that, and yeah, there are people who do that. So some of the trust, there are some lenders, what they do is they don't see the whole picture, they only want to know what the trust is doing. As long as the trust is positive, they'll be able to give you more money. So you can probably consider it.
And I know that you are not a finance guy, but does it cost a lot to manage the trust thing? For example, if I buy something on a trust, is it going to cost me a lend?
From property side of it doesn't. But for accountant, yes, because it's a different entity, it's a different business. So you will have to every year you have some expenses. But again, it's like if you're running a business, you have to pay for your lights, you have to pay for your carpets, cleaning and stuff. It's just no different. So you need an accountant to do your numbers, and that's what it is.
But is the cost very high for the trust? Because I haven't.
Depends, it's
Someone, if they have already done that, please.
Yeah, like there are some good accountants downstairs, so they've been helping some of my clients as well. So please go see them. I think there's one right next to me. You can see tax purpose, and then there's one Phil Console who has been doing for a number of my clients as well. I think he's in number 11, I think 10 or 11. Yeah, so go and speak to him.